For 47 years, every Wednesday at 3 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of the door closing and saw my husband leaving the house with an old suitcase in his hands. I never asked anything, until one night in 1968, I followed him, and what I discovered made me fall to my knees in the middle of the street. My name is Helen, I'm 83 years old, and today I'm going to tell you the most painful and most beautiful story of my life. A story I kept secret for decades, with shame, with fear of judgment. But the time has come for you to know the truth about the man I loved, about the daughter they tore from my arms, and about a secret that almost destroyed my marriage, but in the end taught me the true meaning of love. Before I begin, I'd like to ask you something. If this story touches your heart, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel to help me continue telling these life stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing that there are people from all over watching me. Now, yes, I'll start from the beginning, from the day I met Joseph. It was 1958. I was only 16 years old. I lived with my parents in a simple neighborhood in Chicago, there near the South Side. My father was a factory worker in a textile mill, my mother a seamstress. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Back then, a girl from a good family didn't go out alone on the street. We went to church every Sunday, to church festivals, and that's it. The rest of the time was inside the house, learning to cook, to sew, to be a good wife, because that's what they expected from us, you understand? To get married, have children, take care of the house. Nobody asked if we had other dreams. I met Joseph at a church summer festival. He was 21 years old, worked as a helper in a grocery store. He was a handsome young man, you know? Black hair, well combed with pomade, always in dress pants and a starched white shirt, even though he earned little. He had a smile that lit up his whole face. And his eyes, my God, they were kind eyes, the eyes of a good person. That night at the festival, he asked me to dance. It was a group dance, everyone together, jumping, laughing. But when the music ended and a slower one started, he pulled me again. And there, in the middle of that festival full of people, I felt my heart beat differently for the first time in my life. His mother was watching, my mother was watching, everyone was watching, because back then, anything was cause for gossip. But I didn't care. After that day, Joseph started coming to my house. Every Sunday after church, he would show up to have coffee with my father. They talked about baseball, about politics, about work. And I stayed in the kitchen with my mother, making cake, making coffee, keeping an eye on the door to see when he looked at me. It seems silly now, but back then it was like that. We couldn't even be alone. Everything was watched. Everything was controlled. 6 months later, in January 1959, Joseph asked my father for my hand in marriage. I was 17 years old. I remember that night, after he left, my mother came into my room and sat on my bed. She held my hand and said, "Daughter, Joseph is a good young man, hard-working, from a good family, God-fearing. You're going to be happy with him." And I believed it. I truly believed it. We got married in April 1959. It was a simple wedding at the neighborhood church with a borrowed dress from my cousin. The party was at my parents' house with ham sandwiches, cornbread cake, and soda. Nothing fancy, but everyone was happy, you know? The whole family together, the neighbors, friends. Joseph didn't stop smiling, and my God, I was so happy I thought I was going to explode. We went to live in a rented room, just one room, with a bed, a 2-burner stove, a small table, and a sink. The bathroom was in the backyard, shared with 3 other tenants, but for me that was a palace, because it was ours. It was our little corner. Joseph left every day at 5 in the morning to work at the store. I stayed home cleaning, cooking, waiting for him to come back. And when he came home at night, tired, his body aching from carrying weight all day, he hugged me and said, "It was worth it, Helen. Every day I work is worth it, because I come home, and you're here waiting for me." The first months were the happiest of my life. We had nothing, but we had each other. Joseph was a good husband. He never raised his hand to me, never raised his voice. He came home, washed his face, sat down to dinner, and told me about his day. And I told him about mine, about the neighbor who came for coffee, about the dress I was sewing to earn some money, about how the market was more expensive. Simple conversation, but it was our conversation, and that was enough. In September 1959, I realized my period was late. I was 17 years old and I was pregnant. When I told Joseph, he picked me up and spun me around in the middle of that cramped little room. He was radiant. "We're going to have a child, Helen. We're going to be a real family." And I cried with happiness. I cried so much I soaked his whole shirt. The pregnancy was difficult. I was very nauseous. I had dizziness, felt sick. But Joseph took care of me. He woke up at dawn to make tea when I threw up. He asked for time off work to take me to the health clinic. He brought fruit, bought milk, did everything he could to see me well. And I, even with all the discomfort, was happy, because growing inside me was our child, the fruit of our love. In May 1960, I started to feel labor pains. Joseph rushed me to Cook County Hospital. It was a public hospital, full of people, with that strong smell of disinfectant that made you nauseous. But it was what we could afford. Joseph stayed in the waiting room. Back then, husbands couldn't enter the delivery room, and I went alone, afraid, feeling those pains that seemed to tear my body in half. The labor lasted almost 12 hours. 12 hours of pain, of screams, of despair. The nurses came and went. The doctor appeared from time to time, but nobody explained anything. I just heard them whispering, looking at each other with worried faces. And I was so afraid of dying, of losing the baby. I prayed nonstop, asking God to help me, asking for my child to be born well. When Maria finally was born, I didn't hear crying, and that terrified me. I tried to get up, tried to see, but the nurses held me down. "Calm down, Mrs. Helen, calm down." Then yes, after a few seconds that seemed like an eternity, I heard a weak cry, muffled, but it was crying. My daughter was alive, but the joy didn't last long, very little. The doctor came close to me with a serious face and said, "Mrs. Helen, you need to prepare yourself. The child was born with some problems. We're going to need to do some tests." I didn't understand at the time. What problems? What tests? I just wanted to see my daughter. I just wanted to hold her in my arms. They took a while to bring me Maria, and when they brought her, I saw. She was tiny, with slightly purplish skin, her little eyes closed, but what scared me was that she was too limp. You know when you pick up a rag doll? It was like that. She didn't move her little legs, didn't move her little arms, just breathed weakly. The doctor explained. He said something had happened during delivery, lack of oxygen to the brain. He used a strange name that I didn't understand at the time. Cerebral palsy. He said Maria was going to have movement problems, that she might never be able to walk, that she would need special care for the rest of her life. And then he said something that broke my heart. He said, "You're very young. You're going to have other children. There are institutions that take care of children like this. It would be better for you to think about that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean, give up my daughter? What do you mean, have other children?" That was my daughter, my Maria. I had carried her 9 months in my belly. I had almost died to bring her into the world, and now they wanted me to give her up just because she was born different. I held Maria in my arms and cried. I cried so much I thought I was going to dry up. And there, in that hospital room, with my limp daughter in my lap, I promised her, "Mommy won't ever abandon you. Never, my daughter. I swear." When Joseph came into the room and saw the situation, he collapsed. He, who had always been so strong, so steady, fell to his knees on the floor and sobbed like a child. He took Maria in his arms, looked at that little face, and whispered, "My daughter, my little daughter." And at that moment, I thought we were going to face this together, that we were going to raise our daughter with all the difficulties, but together. But the world outside didn't think so. When we came home with Maria, hell began. Joseph's mother was the first. She knocked on our door 2 days later, came in without asking permission, looked at Maria, and made a face of disgust. Real disgust, as if my daughter were an animal, something repugnant. And then she let it out. This is God's punishment. You must have done something very wrong for God to punish you like this. This child shouldn't have been born. I'll never forget those words. Never. I grabbed my daughter and asked her to leave my house, but she continued. She said we had to take Maria to an institution, that we had no conditions to raise a child like that people were going to talk, that they were going to laugh at us. You're going to be the joke of the whole neighborhood, she shouted and left slamming the door. The neighbors started to whisper. When I went out on the street with Maria in my arms, they moved away. Some made the sign of the cross, as if my daughter were a curse. Others just looked with pity. That pity that hurts more than hatred. A neighbor even said to me, "Poor you, so young, already with a cross like that to carry for the rest of your life." As if my daughter were a cross, a curse, a punishment. Joseph started to change. He came home and didn't want to hold Maria. He stayed quiet, locked in his thoughts. I could see he was suffering. But it wasn't just the pain of having a daughter with a disability. It was the pressure. The pressure from his mother, from friends, from co-workers, everyone saying he had to do something, that he couldn't let his career, his life be destroyed because of a child who was never going to be normal. And I, poor me, tried to hold everything together alone. I woke up at dawn to give her a bottle. I did exercises with Maria, as the nurses had taught. I took her to medical appointments, which were expensive and complicated, and Joseph was increasingly distant, increasingly sunk in that heavy silence. Until one night, Maria was 6 months old, Joseph came home and said, "Helen, we need to talk." We sat at that small kitchen table and he spoke, said he couldn't take the pressure anymore, that his boss had said he was going to fire him because he missed too much because of Maria's appointments, that his mother was getting sick with grief, that the neighbors wouldn't stop talking. And then he said the phrase that killed a piece of me. "Helen, I think we should take Maria to an institution, a place where she'll have the right care. We're not able to take care of her properly. We're young. We can have other children, healthy children." I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. This was Joseph, the man who had spun me around in the middle of the room when he found out he was going to be a father. The man who had cried with emotion when Maria was born. Was he really asking me to abandon our daughter? I said, no. I said I would never do that, that Maria was our daughter and we were going to take care of her no matter what it cost. We argued. For the first time in our marriage, we really fought. He yelled, I yelled, Maria cried in the crib. And in the middle of all that confusion, Joseph said, "Then I'm going to make the decision alone because I'm not going to let our life be destroyed." 3 days later, at dawn in November 1960, I woke up and Maria wasn't in the crib. I got up desperate, looking for her around the house, and Joseph wasn't there. His old suitcase wasn't there either. I ran out into the street, barefoot in my nightgown, screaming his name. But it was too late. He had gone and had taken my daughter. He came back in the middle of the afternoon, alone, without Maria, without the suitcase, with red eyes from crying so much. I threw myself at him, punching his chest, screaming, "Where's my daughter? What did you do with her?" And he, with a broken voice, said, "I took her to an institution in the suburbs, a good place, a place where they'll take good care of her. She'll have doctors, nurses, everything we can't give her. It was better this way, Helen. It was better this way." I collapsed, fell to the floor, and stayed there unable to move. My daughter had been torn from me. My own husband had stolen my daughter from me, and I hadn't done anything to stop it. I had slept while he took her from the crib. I had failed as a mother. Joseph tried to console me. He said it was temporary, that when we got organized, when we had more money, more structure, we would get her back. But I knew it was a lie. I knew I would never see my Maria again. And for 8 years, I really didn't. The months that followed after Joseph took Maria away were the darkest of my life. I didn't want to get out of bed anymore, didn't want to eat, didn't want to live. The empty crib in the corner of the room looked at me every day, accusing me, reminding me that I had failed, that I hadn't been strong enough to protect my own daughter. Joseph tried to talk to me. He came home from work, sat on the edge of the bed, and held my hand. He said he had done it for us, that Maria was well cared for, that one day when we had the means, we would get her back. But I couldn't look at him. Every time I saw his face, I saw the man who had stolen my daughter from me. I lost so much weight in those first months that my mother was scared. She came to visit me and cried when she saw me like that. But what could she do back then? A married woman belonged to her husband. His decision was the final decision. She herself said, "Daughter, Joseph did what he thought was best. You need to trust him. He's your husband." As if that solved anything. As if the title of husband erased the pain of a mother that I felt. December 1960 came, the first Christmas without Maria. I had prepared so much for this Christmas in my head during pregnancy. I dreamed of Maria tiny in my lap, all dressed up, taking pictures. But Christmas came, and there was no one, just me and Joseph in that silent little room. His family called us for lunch, but I didn't want to go. How was I going to sit at the table with that mother-in-law who had called my daughter God's punishment? How was I going to pretend everything was okay? Joseph went alone, and I stayed there lying down, looking at the ceiling, thinking where my daughter would be. Was she being treated well? Was there someone holding her? Did she miss me? Does a 6-month-old baby miss their mother? These questions ate me up inside every day. January 1961 came, a new year, but for me everything remained old and rotten. Joseph started to lose patience with me. He came home tired from work, and I was the same way he had left me in the morning, in bed, looking at nothing. He said, "Helen, you need to react. Life goes on. We need to move forward. Move forward as if it were that simple. As if I could simply erase from memory the 9 months I carried Maria in my belly, the 6 months I took care of her, her smell, the way she looked at me. But I tried, because women back then were taught to be strong, to swallow pain, to not give trouble. So I got up, went back to cooking, went back to cleaning the house, went back to smiling when Joseph came home, even if inside I was dead, and life kept going. But it was a mechanical life, you know? I did everything I had to do, but it was as if I was living on autopilot, as if the real Helen had died along with that stolen motherhood. Joseph noticed. He wasn't stupid. He knew something between us had broken. We didn't talk anymore like before. We didn't laugh anymore. There were no more long hugs, those silly conversations at bedtime. We lived in the same space, shared the same bed, but we were two strangers. Two strangers trapped in a marriage that had been beautiful once, but now was just obligation. In March 1961, almost a year after Maria was born, I started working. I got a job at a sewing factory near our house. I earned little, but I needed to get out of that room. I needed to occupy my head with something. I worked Monday through Saturday, from 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, came back home dead tired. But at least when I was sewing, I didn't think. And not thinking was the only way to survive. The years went by like this: 1961, 1962, 2 years of silence, 2 years of a cold marriage. Joseph continued working at the store, I continued at the factory. We split the bills, we split the house, but we no longer shared life. He never touched on the subject of Maria again, never talked about getting her back. It was as if she had never existed. And I, coward that I always was, also didn't touch on the subject, because deep down I was afraid. Afraid of finding out she had died, that she had been mistreated, afraid of finding out the truth. Then came 1963, and everything started to get strange. It was on a Wednesday in February. I had woken up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. When I came back to the room, I noticed Joseph wasn't in bed. I thought it was strange, but figured he had also gone to the bathroom. I went back to sleep. The next morning, he was there normal, having coffee, getting ready for work. I didn't say anything, But the following Wednesday, it happened again. I woke up at 3 in the morning and he wasn't there. This time, I stayed awake, waiting. Half an hour later, I heard the front door closing. I got up on tiptoes and peeked through the window. I saw Joseph leaving with that old suitcase of his in hand, the same suitcase he had used to take Maria away. My heart raced. Where was he going at 3 in the morning with a suitcase? I thought about running after him, but I didn't. I stayed there paralyzed, watching him disappear into the darkness of the street. I went back to bed, but didn't sleep anymore. I stayed there with 1,000 thoughts in my head, waiting for him to come back. He came back at 6 in the morning. I heard the door opening very slowly. I pretended I was sleeping. I felt him coming into the room, putting the suitcase in the closet, lying down in bed beside me. He was tired, you could tell. His breathing was heavy, and there was a different smell on him. It wasn't a woman's perfume. It was a smell of medicine, of hospital. In the morning when we woke up, I asked, "Did you go out last night?" He looked at me surprised, but quickly disguised it. "Go out? No, why are you asking that?" I didn't insist. But I knew he was lying. I had seen him leaving. I had felt the empty bed. The following Wednesday, I stayed alert. And yes, at 3 in the morning, he got up. I heard him getting dressed in the dark, taking the suitcase, leaving. This time I got up and went to the window. I watched until he disappeared at the end of the street and stayed awake waiting. He came back at the same time, 6 in the morning, tired, with that medicine smell. This became a routine. Every Wednesday, religiously. He left at 3 in the morning and came back at 6. And I, coward, didn't ask anything, because deep down I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid of finding out he had another woman, another family, another life, because that's what I thought, you know? That he had gotten tired of me, that sad wife, that woman who couldn't get over the loss of her daughter, that he had found another, a happy woman, healthy, who would give him the normal children he wanted so much. And that ate me up inside, drove me crazy, but I didn't have the courage to confront. The months went by, March, April, May, June, every Wednesday the same thing. And me there pretending I didn't see, pretending I didn't know. But inside I was dying. Suspicion was consuming me. I started paying attention to other details. Every Thursday, the day after his outings, Joseph was quieter than normal, more thoughtful, and always he had less money. I controlled the household accounts, so I knew how much he earned, how much he gave me, and every week it was short, not much, but it was short. I asked, "Joseph, where's the rest of the money?" And he answered, "I spent it on some things at work." What things? He never explained properly, and I didn't insist, because insisting meant having to hear the truth. And I wasn't ready for the truth. In July 1963, the situation got worse. I started having nightmares. I dreamed that Joseph had another family, that he had other children, healthy children, perfect ones, that he truly loved, and that I was just the obligation, the official wife, the one he had to keep to not become a shame. I woke up sweating, with my heart racing, looking at him sleeping beside me and asking myself who this man was. Because the Joseph I knew, the Joseph who had spun me around the room when he found out he was going to be a father, that Joseph had disappeared. And in his place was a stranger who left every Wednesday at dawn and came back smelling like medicine. I thought about following him. 1,000 times I thought about it, but never had the courage. I was afraid of what I would find. I was afraid of seeing him entering another woman's house, of seeing him with another baby in his arms. So I stayed there, coward, just watching. In September 1963, almost a year after the outing started, I decided to look in his suitcase. It was a Wednesday morning. He had just left for work. I opened the closet, took that old suitcase. My heart was beating so hard I thought I was going to have a stroke. I opened the suitcase. And you know what was inside? Clothes. Clean clothes, folded, cloth diapers, medicines, and a small rag doll, kind of worn. I didn't understand anything, Diapers? Medicines? Did he have a baby somewhere? Or could it be Maria? He hadn't taken her to an institution. He had hidden her somewhere? My head was exploding from thinking so much. I closed the suitcase quickly and put everything back in place. My hand was shaking. That night, when Joseph came home, I almost told him I had gone through his things, but I didn't because I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what to ask. The doubt was killing me. Every Wednesday I woke up and saw him leaving. Every Thursday I saw him coming back, tired, sad. And me there trapped in that situation, without the courage to do anything, without the courage to ask, without the courage to follow. 1964 came. The outings continued. 1965 came. They continued. 1966, 1967, 5 years. 5 years of Wednesday dawns. 5 years of silence, 5 years of a marriage that was just appearance. We didn't fight, we didn't argue, we simply existed. He went to work, I went to work. We came back home, had dinner, slept, and on Wednesday he left, and I pretended I didn't see. The neighbors started talking. Of course they did, because nothing went unnoticed in that neighborhood. A neighbor came to me one day in 1967 and said, "Helen, I didn't want to meddle, but I've seen your husband leaving at dawn every Wednesday. Do you know about this?" I pretended surprise. "Oh, he goes out to do a side job, extra work to save money." She looked at me with that pitying face, that face of someone who didn't believe anything and left. But I knew she was going to spread it to everyone, and I knew people were going to start saying my husband had a mistress. And maybe he did. Maybe he had gotten tired of me completely and had found another. A woman who wasn't broken like me. A woman who could give him the family he wanted. In August 1968, I couldn't take it anymore. It had been 5 years. 5 years of secrets. 5 years of lies. I needed to know, even if the truth destroyed me. I needed to know. It was a Tuesday, August 13th, 1968. I remember the date because it was the day my life turned upside down. I was lying down, pretending to sleep, waiting. I knew that the next day, Wednesday, he was going to leave, and this time I was going to follow. I prepared everything. I separated dark clothes to not be seen. I took some money I had saved hidden. I waited. When it was 3 in the morning that Wednesday, August 14th, 1968, Joseph got up. I pretended I was sleeping. I heard him getting dressed, taking the suitcase. I heard the door closing. I waited about 2 minutes. My heart was racing. I got up, got dressed quickly, took my purse and left. The street was dark and empty. It was scary, but I couldn't turn back. Not now. I saw Joseph up ahead, walking fast. I started following, keeping my distance. He went to the bus stop. He took the first bus that passed. I got on through the back door, hid in the back, praying he wouldn't see me. The bus rolled, left our neighborhood, went to the south side, continued farther and farther to places poorer, more remote. I was nervous, didn't know that area, didn't know where we were going. After almost an hour of travel, Joseph got off. I got off too, a few meters later. I followed him on foot. The streets were empty. There were only stray dogs and some drunks sleeping on the sidewalk. I was afraid, but I continued. He entered a narrow little street. Simple houses, shacks really, everything very poor, very sad. He stopped at a small wooden house with peeling paint. He knocked on the door. An elderly lady opened it. They talked quietly. She let him in. I stayed outside, hidden behind a tree. I didn't know what to do. Go in, wait. My head was exploding. Who was that woman? What was Joseph doing there? I approached the house slowly. There was a small window, half open. I peeked, and what I saw made me fall to my knees right there in the middle of that dirty street. When I peeked through that window and saw what was happening inside that house, my whole life passed before my eyes. Everything I had imagined, all the assumptions, all the sleepless nights thinking my husband had betrayed me, all of that collapsed in 1 second, because inside, sitting in an old wooden chair, was Joseph, and in his lap was a girl. A girl about 8 years old, thin, with long brown hair, tied in a ponytail. She was sitting crooked, with her body kind of falling to the side, and Joseph was holding her carefully, as if she were made of glass. He had a spoon in his hand and was feeding her slowly, with patience, cleaning her little mouth every time the food dripped. And I knew who that girl was, even after 8 years without seeing her, even though she was so much bigger, so different. I knew. It was Maria, my daughter, my Maria, who had been torn from me, who I thought was in an institution far away, being cared for by strangers. But no. She was there in that simple house, and my husband was with her. My legs weakened. I fell to my knees right there in the street, with my hand over my mouth, trying to muffle the sound of the cry that wanted to come out. My whole body trembled. It wasn't from cold. It was from shock. It was from pain. It was from anger. It was from happiness. It was all mixed into one thing that I couldn't even name. I stayed there for a few minutes, I don't know how long, trying to process what I was seeing. Joseph continued feeding Maria. He talked to her quietly. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I saw his mouth moving. I saw him smiling at her. And Maria, my God, Maria smiled back. A crooked smile, but it was a smile. My daughter was alive. My daughter was there. The elderly lady who had opened the door was beside them. She took a cloth and wiped Maria's face. Then she helped Joseph put the girl in an old wheelchair that was leaning against the wall. The chair was wooden, makeshift, not one of those from the hospital, but you could see it had been made with care, with love. Joseph knelt in front of Maria, took her little legs and started doing some movements. He bent them slowly, stretched them, turned them to the sides. Exercises. He was doing exercises with her, like the doctors had taught when she was born. He remembered. After 8 years, he remembered. That's when I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, still shaking, still with tears running, and went to the door. I knocked hard. The knocks came out desperate, angry. I wanted him to feel from the sound that I was there, that I had discovered. The elderly lady came to answer. When she opened the door and saw me, she turned white. She looked back at Joseph and whispered, "Mr. Joseph, there's a lady here." Joseph got up from the floor, turned to the door, and when he saw me, he froze. His face turned pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He knew. He knew he had been discovered. I entered without asking permission, past the lady, past Joseph, and went straight to where Maria was. I knelt in front of her and looked at that little face I had dreamed about for 8 years. She had grown so much. She was no longer that limp little baby they had torn from my arms. She was a girl, a beautiful girl, with brown eyes, fair skin, with those chubby cheeks still from a child. But her body was fragile. Her little arms were too thin, her legs twisted, her head leaned to the side, and when she looked at me, her little eyes widened. I don't know if she recognized me. I don't know if some part of that child remembered the mother who had rocked her in the first 6 months of life, but she looked at me and smiled. That smile destroyed me. I reached out my hand and touched her face. It was warm. It was real. It was my daughter alive. There I couldn't hold it. I hugged her with everything I had, pressed her against me and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. Loud sobs, desperate. And Maria, poor thing, stayed quiet in my arms. I felt her little heart beating against my chest. I don't know how long I stayed like that. When I finally let her go and turned to Joseph, he was leaning against the wall with his hands on his face, crying too. That man who had always been so strong, so controlled, was falling apart in front of me. I got up, walked over to him and slapped his face. It was so hard my hand burned. He didn't even react. He just looked at me with those red eyes, full of guilt, full of fear, and then I screamed. I screamed everything that had been trapped inside me for 8 years. You lied to me. You took my daughter from me and lied. You made me suffer, made me think she was far away, that I would never see her again. And she was here all this time. How could you do this to me? He tried to speak, but I didn't let him. I continued. 8 years, Joseph. 8 years. I lived believing my daughter was in an institution. 8 years crying. 8 years blaming myself for not fighting more. And you knew? You knew where she was all this time? The elderly lady approached, scared. Miss, please, the girl is getting nervous. I looked at Maria. She had her little eyes wide, scared by the screaming. I took a deep breath. I tried to control myself, but the anger was consuming me. Joseph finally managed to speak. His voice came out low, broken. Helen, I know you're angry. I know you have every right to hate me. But let me explain, please. Let me explain what happened. I crossed my arms. Explain then. Explain why you destroyed my life. Explain why you put me through this hell. He took a deep breath, wiped the tears, and started talking. That day, I took Maria. I really was going to take her to an institution. I had everything arranged. I was going to leave her at an orphanage in the suburbs, a place that took care of special children. But when I got there, Helen, when I saw that place, he stopped. His voice failed. There were more than 50 children, all piled up, some tied to beds, screaming, dirty. The smell was horrible. The nuns who took care of them couldn't handle it. They did what they could, but there was no way to take proper care of so many children. And when they took Maria from my arms, she started crying, that desperate cry. And I looked at that place and thought, I can't leave my daughter here. I can't condemn her to this. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I came back to Chicago with her in my arms, not knowing what to do. I couldn't take her back home because you were going to ask, because I had already said I had left her at the institution. I had lied, and now I didn't know how to go back. I kept walking around the city with her, desperate, until I stopped at a diner and met Mrs. Sebastian. I looked at the elderly lady. She was quiet in a corner with her head down. Joseph continued. Mrs. Sebastian had lost her daughter a few years ago. Her daughter had also been born with problems. She only lived until she was 5. When she saw Maria and I told her the situation, she offered to help. She said she could take care of the girl here at her house, that she had experience, that she knew what to do. I started paying her. At first it was little, just the basics, but over time I got a second job. I started working at dawn in a bakery, from 3 to 6. That's why the Wednesday outings, because Wednesday was the day I didn't need to go to the bakery. It was the day I came to see Maria, spend a few hours with her, do the exercises, feed her, change her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And you didn't think to tell me? Didn't think I had the right to know? He looked at me, and I saw so much pain in that look. I thought about it. Every day I thought about it. But Helen, you were so destroyed. You had entered such a deep depression. I was afraid that if you knew I had lied, that I had hidden Maria, you would leave, or worse, that you wouldn't be able to take it and would do something foolish. You were so fragile those first months. I was going to tell you. I swear I was. But time went by, and every day that passed, it got harder. How was I going to come to you after a year and say, remember our daughter? She's not in an institution. She's in a house in the suburbs, and I come see her every week. Would you forgive me? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I didn't know what I felt. It was anger, it was relief, it was gratitude, all together. He continued, I know I was a coward. I know I should have told you from the beginning, but I was so afraid of losing you, so afraid you wouldn't understand, that you would hate me. So I kept going, kept lying, kept working like a condemned man to pay for her care and still maintain our house. And every Wednesday I came here, saw my daughter, and died of guilt because I knew you had the right to be here too. I looked at Mrs. Sebastian. You knew I didn't know anything? She nodded her head. I knew, Mrs. Helen. And many times I told your Joseph to tell. I said you had the right to see the girl, but he always said he was going to tell, that he was waiting for the right moment. The years went by and the moment never came. I went back near Maria. She was quiet in the chair, looking at me. I knelt in front of her again. I held her little hand. It was so small, so fragile. "You're so beautiful, my daughter," I whispered. "So beautiful. Mommy missed you so much, so much." And then I had a revelation, something that hit me like a punch. For 8 years, I had lived hating my husband, thinking he was a monster, a man who had abandoned his own daughter to have an easier life. But the truth was different. He hadn't abandoned. He had done everything wrong. He had lied. He had hurt me. But he hadn't abandoned his daughter. He had worked 2 jobs. He had woken up at dawn every week. He had spent every extra penny to ensure Maria had care. He had been a father in the wrong way, in the crooked way, but he had been. I got up and looked at him. "I don't know if I can forgive you for what you did. You stole 8 years with my daughter from me. 8 years I'll never get back. But I understand why you did it. I understand the desperation. I understand the fear, because I also had fear back then. Fear of judgment, fear of pressure, fear of not being able to handle it." He took a step toward me. "Helen," I raised my hand, interrupting. "But now it's over. The lies are over. This secret is over. Maria is our daughter, and she's coming home, to our house, today." Mrs. Sebastian stepped forward. "Mrs. Helen, the girl needs a lot of care. She takes medicine 3 times a day. She needs help eating, going to the bathroom, everything. It's going to be a lot of work. People are going to talk. They're going to judge." "Are you sure?" I looked at her, and for the first time in 8 years, I was sure of something. "I am. She's my daughter. I don't care what people are going to say. I don't care anymore. I lost 8 years with her because of fear of others' judgment. I'm not going to lose another day." Joseph approached. "Helen, think carefully. We're going to have to change everything in our lives. I'm going to have to keep working both jobs to pay for the medicines. You're going to have to quit the factory job to take care of her full time. We're going to be even poorer. And people, Helen, people are going to be cruel." "I don't care," I answered. And it was true. For the first time, it was true. I survived 8 years without my daughter, 8 years of pain, of emptiness, of guilt. Now that I know she's alive, that she's here, I'm not going to leave her again. Never again. I looked at Mrs. Sebastian. "You took very good care of my daughter all these years. I'll never be able to thank you enough. But now she's going home to where she should have always been." Mrs. Sebastian had tears in her eyes. "I'm going to miss her a lot. But I know it's right. She needs to be with her mother. She always needed." She approached Maria, kissed her forehead. "You're going to be okay, my girl. You're going to be with Mommy now. You're going to be happy." Joseph was standing there, watching the scene. "So that's it? You really want to bring her home?" I looked at him. "It's not a matter of wanting, it's a matter of needing. I need my daughter and she needs me. We've lost too much time." And that's how, in that dawn of August 14th, 1968, 8 years after having my daughter torn from my arms, I finally brought her back to where she always belonged. Joseph picked her up. Mrs. Sebastian packed her little clothes, the medicines, the rag doll. And we left that house, the 3 of us. A broken family, hurt, full of wounds, but a family finally. On the bus back, with Maria sleeping in my lap after so long, I looked at Joseph. He was tired, with swollen eyes from crying so much. "We're going to make it," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He took my hand and squeezed. "We will. I promise I'm going to do everything right this time. No lies, no secrets." When we got home, the sun was rising. It was a new day. And for the first time in 8 years, I felt I was really alive again. When we arrived home that morning with Maria in our arms, the reality of what we had done started to hit. That little room that had always been cramped for 2 people now had to fit 3. And one of the 3 needed care all the time. The first thing Joseph did was dismantle the kitchen table to make space. We needed room for Maria's wheelchair. We needed space for her to move around, even if little. We pushed the bed to the corner, put the closet against the wall, and even so, there was barely room to circulate. But none of that mattered, because for the first time in 8 years, I woke up and had my daughter beside me. She slept in bed with me that first night. Joseph slept on the floor, on top of some old blankets. I stayed up all night, just looking at her, afraid it was all a dream, afraid of waking up and finding out she wasn't there. But she was. She was breathing beside me. From time to time she moved, made little noises, and I held her little hand. That little hand so small, so fragile, but so real. The next day, the first neighbor showed up. It was Mrs. Conception, that same one who years ago had said Maria was a cross I would have to carry. She knocked on the door early in the morning with the excuse of bringing some bread, but I knew what she wanted. She wanted to see, wanted to make sure the rumors that must already be running through the whole neighborhood were true. When I opened the door and she saw Maria sitting in the wheelchair, her face was pure shock. Helen, but wasn't this girl in an institution? What is she doing here? I took a deep breath. She's home, where she should have always been. She's my daughter, and she's going to live here with us from now on. Mrs. Conception looked at Maria with that mixture of pity and disgust that made me sick. But Helen, do you know the work this is going to be? A child like this, you're going to have to quit your job, you're going to go through hardship, and people are going to talk. They're already talking. Let them talk, I answered, and closed the door in her face. But she was right about one thing. People talked. Oh, how they talked. In less than a week, the whole neighborhood knew that Silva's defective daughter had come back. When I went out on the street with Maria, people stopped to look. Some whispered, others pointed. There was a young woman who picked up her child and crossed the street when she saw me coming, as if disability were contagious. At the market, the vendors treated me differently, some with exaggerated pity. Oh, poor thing, what a weight you carry. Others with contempt. I don't know how you stand it. I, in your place, would have left her in an institution. And there were those who simply ignored me, pretended I didn't exist, that Maria didn't exist. But the worst were the children. The street children, you know? They had no filter. When I passed with Maria, they pointed and laughed. Look at the crazy one. Look at the cripple. The mothers did nothing. Some even laughed along, and Maria heard everything. She might not speak properly, might not walk, but she understood. I saw it in her eyes. I saw the shame. One afternoon I was bathing Maria, and she started crying. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a cry of real sadness. That low cry of someone with a broken heart. I held her in my lap, both of us wet, and let her cry. I know, my daughter. I know the world is cruel, that people are mean, but I'm here. Me and your father. And we love you. We love you so much. Joseph, poor thing, was killing himself working. He continued with both jobs. He left at dawn, came back only at night. He arrived destroyed with his body aching, but always asked about Maria, always wanted to know how her day had been. And before sleeping, even dead tired, he went to her bed, kissed her forehead, and said, "Daddy loves you, my princess." I quit my job at the factory, as Joseph had predicted. There was no way to work and take care of Maria at the same time. She needed someone full-time. So we started living only on his salary, and it was tight, very tight. There were months we didn't have money even to buy meat. We ate rice with eggs, beans with cheap sausage, pasta with nothing. But Maria's medicines never ran out, never. Joseph would skip meals to ensure there was money for the pharmacy. I sewed clothes on the side in my spare time to help. I hemmed pants, sewed buttons, fixed tiers. Any extra money was welcome. In 1969, Joseph's mother showed up. She hadn't come to our house since the day Maria was born, back in 1960, 9 years without talking to us. But that day, she showed up, knocked on the door, entered without being invited, and went straight to the point. "Joseph, how long are you going to maintain this charade? You have a young wife, You can have other children, normal children. Why do you insist on sacrificing yourself because of this creature?" I saw Joseph turn red with rage. He got up from the chair and pointed his finger at his mother. "You don't call my daughter a creature. She has a name. It's Maria, and she's not a sacrifice. She's my daughter. You leave my house and don't come back until you learn to respect my family." The mother-in-law left fuming, yelling that he was going to regret it, that God was going to punish us for stubbornness, and she never came back. Joseph cut ties with her. He cut ties with everyone in his family who didn't accept Maria. And there were many. My family was a little better. My mother came to visit Maria from time to time, brought little clothes, brought food, but I could see she wasn't comfortable. She didn't know how to deal with her granddaughter. She was afraid to pick her up, afraid of hurting her. And my father never came, not once. He was ashamed of having a disabled granddaughter. The years went by, 1970, 1971, 1972. The routine was always the same. Wake up early, bathe Maria, give breakfast, give medicines, do the exercises the doctors had taught, bend her little legs, massage her little arms, try to stimulate movements. Joseph had bought some books about physical therapy. We didn't have money to pay for a therapist, so we did it ourselves. Maria didn't speak. She made sounds, babbled some things, but nothing you could understand properly. But she communicated in other ways, with her look, with her smile. She smiled when she was happy, cried when she was sad or in pain. And we learned to understand her. We created our own language. There was a time, I think it was in 1973, that Maria got very sick. Pneumonia. She was fragile. Any little thing became serious. The doctor said she had to be hospitalized, but hospitalizing was expensive, very expensive. We didn't have it. Joseph went to the bank to try for a loan. They denied it. He tried with a loan shark. The interest was absurd, but he took it anyway, because it was our daughter's life that was at stake. Maria was in the hospital for 15 days. I slept on the floor beside her bed every night. The nurses tried to send me away, said there were visiting hours, but I didn't leave. I made a scene, cried, begged, until an older nurse took pity on me and let me stay. They were the 15 longest days of my life, seeing my daughter there, so small, so weak, full of tubes, fighting to breathe. There were nights I thought I was going to lose her, that she wasn't going to make it until dawn. I prayed nonstop, made promises, promised everything to God if He let my daughter live. And she lived. Slowly, but she got better. The fever went down, her breathing normalized, and on the 15th day we were discharged. Joseph came to get us, and when we got home, he hugged me and cried. I thought I was going to lose her, Helen. I thought I was going to lose our girl. The loan debt hung over us for years. Joseph paid a little every month. The interest ate us alive. He had to take extra gigs. He carried groceries for the rich ladies from the north side on weekends. He did hauling with a borrowed handcart. Everything to pay off that debt. In 1975, we managed to move to a better house. It was still a rental, but it was a real house, with 2 small bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room. It seemed like a palace compared to that little room where we lived. Maria got a room of her own. We decorated it with drawings I painted on the wall. We made a little curtain with fabric scraps, and for the first time, she had a little space that was just hers. At that time, Maria was already 15 years old. She was still small for her age because of the disability, but she had grown. She was no longer that little baby they had taken from me. She was a young lady, and I saw she was getting smarter. She paid attention to everything. When we turned on the radio, she stayed quiet, listening. When the soap opera was on, she looked at the neighbor's television through the window. One day, Joseph came home with a gift, a small battery-powered radio, tiny, used. He had bought it at a thrift store. He put it beside Maria's bed, and every night, before she slept, he turned on the radio softly, played music, and Maria smiled. She loved music, especially the calmer ones, the slower ones. There was a song she especially liked. It was What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Every time it played, she made a little noise with her mouth, trying to sing along. No proper sound came out, but you could see she was happy. And Joseph bought a cassette tape just with slow songs. He played it every day for her. The 70s were difficult. The country was going through economic troubles. Everything was expensive, but we kept going. There were days that were hard. There were days I cried hidden in the bathroom, not knowing how I was going to make the money stretch until the end of the month. There were days Joseph came home so tired he could barely eat. He just fell into bed and slept. But there were good days too. There were Sundays we took Maria to the park. We stayed there under a tree, the three of us, just enjoying the day. Joseph told her stories, made up stories about princesses and castles. And Maria paid attention with that fixed look, absorbing everything. There were Christmases that were simple, but were happy. We didn't have money for expensive presents, but we always found a way to do something special. One year, I sewed a new rag doll for her. Another year, Joseph made a music box with scrap materials. You turned a crank and it played a little tune. Maria loved it. In 1978, something happened that marked us a lot. We were at the bakery buying bread, me and Maria. She was in the wheelchair and a group of teenagers came in. They saw Maria and started laughing. One of them came close, made a face and said, "Wow, what an ugly thing. Is that a person or an animal?" The others laughed. I felt my blood boil. But before I could do anything, a young woman who was in line turned to the boys and yelled, "Aren't you ashamed laughing at a person who can't defend herself? You're the ugly ones, ugly on the inside. Get out of here before I call the police." The boys ran out, and the woman came to talk to me. "I'm sorry for what happened. Some people just have no manners. Your daughter is beautiful." It was the first time in years that someone called Maria beautiful, and that broke me. I cried right there, in the middle of the bakery. The woman's name was Nancy. She was a teacher at a special school that was opening in the area, and she invited me to bring Maria to see it. She said there were other children like her, that they did activities, played, learned things, and that it was free. The government paid for it. At first, I was afraid of putting Maria in a place where I wouldn't be beside her. But Joseph convinced me. "Helen, she needs to interact with other people. She needs to get out of the house. She can't stay just here with us for her whole life." In 1979, Maria started attending the special school 3 times a week, from 9 to noon. I took her in the morning and picked her up at lunchtime. And you know what? She loved it. For the first time in her life, she was in a place where she wasn't the strange one, where all the children were different, where nobody laughed at her. Teacher Nancy was wonderful. She treated the children with so much affection, so much respect. She did music activities, art, taught simple things, but important ones. And Maria started to develop. She became more communicative, started reacting more to stimuli. One day, the teacher called me and said, "Mrs. Helen, Maria is progressing a lot. She's more attentive, more present. I think with time, she might even learn to communicate better." That filled me with hope. Hope I hadn't felt in years. The 80s came. Maria was 20 years old. She was no longer a child. She was an adult woman, but she continued needing the same care, continued being dependent on everything. And me and Joseph were getting older, more tired. The body wasn't the same anymore. Joseph started having health problems. His back hurt from so many years carrying weight. His knees were bad. The doctor said he needed to stop working so much. But how? We needed the money, we needed Maria's medicines, we needed everything. In 1985, Maria turned 25. We had a small party, just the 3 of us. Joseph bought a little cake at the bakery, put a candle on it, we sang happy birthday, and Maria smiled. That crooked, beautiful smile that lit up the whole world. That night, after Maria slept, me and Joseph were talking in the kitchen. He held my hand and said, "Helen, I know our life hasn't been easy. I know you suffered a lot because of me, because of the lies I told, because of the time you lost with Maria. but I want you to know that I never regretted it, not one day. Having Maria with us was the best decision we made. I looked at that man who had aged beside me, that man who had worked like a condemned man to take care of his daughter, whom the whole world said should be abandoned, and I smiled. I don't regret it either, not 1 second. And it was true. Despite everything, despite the prejudice, the difficulty, the pain, I didn't regret it because I had my daughter, and that was all that mattered. The 80s kept going, and Maria continued being the center of our life. She had become an adult woman, but continued being our girl, our eternal girl. And every day with her was a gift, even on the difficult days. In 1987, Joseph had to stop working at the bakery. His body couldn't take it anymore. His back was so bad there were days he couldn't even get out of bed. I massaged his back at night, saw him biting his lip to not groan with pain. But he never complained, never said he regretted choosing that difficult life. We started living with even less, just the salary from the store, and Maria's medicines were getting more and more expensive. There were months we had to choose between buying food or buying medicine. And we always chose medicine. We ate less, we went through hardship, but Maria never went without her treatment. Teacher Nancy continued being an angel in our lives. She got donations of diapers, clothes, a better wheelchair. There were times she took money out of her own pocket to buy medicine for Maria. She said it was a loan, but I knew it wasn't. She had a huge heart. In 1990, Maria started having seizures. It was on a Sunday morning. We were having coffee, and suddenly she started shaking. Her whole body stiffening, her eyes rolling. I froze in terror. Joseph picked her up, laid her on her side on the floor, put a cloth in her mouth so she wouldn't bite her tongue. He knew what to do because we had read about it. We had prepared for everything. The seizure passed after a few minutes that seemed like hours, and Maria was limp, exhausted. We rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said it was common for people with cerebral palsy to develop epilepsy. He prescribed more medicines, very expensive medicines, medicines we couldn't afford to buy. But we found a way. We always found a way. Joseph sold his old radio. I sold my wedding ring. It was just a simple gold ring, but it was worth something. And with that money, we bought medicines for 3 months. Then we went after government programs, donations, everything we could. The seizures became frequent. There were times Maria had 2, 3 a week, and each one seemed to take a little piece of her life. She got weaker afterward, more tired, slept more, ate less. In 1992, Joseph finally retired, after more than 30 years working like a condemned man. The retirement was pittance, barely paid the rent, but at least he could stay home, could help take care of Maria. And that made such a difference, because taking care of her alone was getting too heavy for me. I was already 50 years old at that time. My body hurt. My back hurt from carrying her so much. My arms hurt from bathing her, changing diapers. But having Joseph there beside me made everything lighter. We divided the tasks. One bathed, while the other prepared food. One did exercises with her, while the other washed clothes. And we talked a lot. After so many years of silence, of hurt, we had gone back to really talking. We reminisced about the dating days, the wedding, the difficulties, the victories, and Maria was always there in the middle of the living room, listening to everything, smiling when we laughed, getting serious when we got serious. The 90s kept going. 1993, 1994, 1995. Maria was more fragile. Respiratory infections were constant. Any cold became bronchitis. Any rain was pneumonia. We lived at the hospital. We knew all the doctors, all the nurses. We had become part of the furniture of that place. In 1996, Mrs. Sebastian passed away, the woman who had taken care of Maria all those years, who had been her second mother. When we received the news, I cried. I cried for the kind woman who had welcomed my daughter when the whole world rejected her. Joseph cried too. We went to the wake and took Maria because she needed to say goodbye. When we put Maria's wheelchair near the casket, I swear I saw a tear running from her eye. She understood. She knew she was losing someone important. I held her hand and whispered, "Mrs. Sebastian loved you very much, my daughter, and she's at peace now." The year 2000 came. New millennium. Everyone talking about parties, about the turn of an era, but for us it was just another year. Another year fighting. Maria was 40 years old, me 58, Joseph 68. We were old, tired, but still couldn't stop. Maria's health got much worse after 40. The seizures were almost daily. Her heart was weak. Her kidneys started having problems. The doctors said she was living by a miracle, that with all the complications she had, it was impressive she had made it this far. But I knew why. It was love. It was the love we gave her every day. In the massages, in the long baths, in the music we played for her, in the stories we told, in the goodnight kiss, in the good morning hug. It was pure love, and love works miracles. In 2003, Joseph started feeling sick. He had diabetes, high blood pressure, his heart was tired, but he refused to go to the doctor. He said he didn't have time for that he needed to take care of Maria. I begged him to go, but he was stubborn. Until one day, he fainted, fell on the kitchen floor. I was bathing Maria, heard the noise, ran out. He was there, stretched out on the floor, pale. I called the ambulance. They took him. He was hospitalized for a week. The doctors said he had had the beginning of a heart attack, that he needed to take care of himself, take medicine, diet. But how to diet when there was barely food at home? How to take medicine when there was barely money for Maria's medicines? Joseph came back home and continued the same routine, working, taking care, sacrificing himself. In 2004, Maria got worse for good. She could barely eat anymore. We had to give her food blended in the blender, very liquid, and even so she choked. She lost weight, got thinner every day, more fragile. She looked like a little bird. Infections were constant. She lived intubated, lived at the hospital, and I saw she was tired, tired of fighting, tired of suffering. But she continued for us. She continued because she knew we needed her as much as she needed us. In January 2005, Maria had severe pneumonia, very severe. They admitted her to the ICU. Me and Joseph couldn't stay inside. We could only visit every hour, 15 minutes. And those 15 minutes were torture, seeing her there full of machines, fighting to breathe. One night, the doctor called me in the hallway, and by the way she looked at me, I knew. I knew what she was going to say. "Mrs. Helen, Maria is very critical. Her lung isn't responding. Her heart is weak. You need to prepare yourself. Call the family." What family? It was just me and Joseph. It had always been just the three of us. I entered the ICU outside visiting hours. The doctor let me. Joseph was beside me. We approached Maria's bed. She was sedated, but when I held her hand, she squeezed lightly. She knew we were there. I stayed there holding her hand, talking. I told her about the day she was born, about how beautiful she was, about how I loved her, about how these 45 years with her had been the best of my life. Even with all the pain, all the difficulty, having her had been the greatest blessing. Joseph also spoke. He told her she had been the best daughter anyone could have, that she had taught him what true love was, that he was proud to be her father, and that wherever she went, he would always be with her. And there, in that cold dawn of February 2005, with our hands holding hers, Maria left. Without pain, in peace, surrounded by the love that sustained her whole life. The wake was small. Very few people went. Some neighbors out of politeness, Teacher Nancy, of course, and us too. But you know what? It didn't matter. Because Maria's life wasn't measured by the number of people who knew her, it was measured by the love she received. And in that regard, she was very rich. The years after Maria left were empty. The house was too quiet. There were days I prepared her food on autopilot, went to call her, and then I remembered she wasn't there anymore. Joseph entered a deep sadness. He blamed himself. He said he should have taken her to the doctor earlier, that he should have insisted more on treatments. I said it wasn't his fault, that we had done everything we could, but he didn't forgive himself. In 2008, Joseph had another heart attack, this time more serious. He was hospitalized for a month. When he left, he was different, quieter, more faded. It seemed he had lost the will to live. I tried to cheer him up, took him for walks, made the foods he liked, but nothing helped. On March 15, 2010, Joseph didn't wake up. I realized he was too cold. I shook him, called him, but he had gone. He had gone to meet his daughter, had gone to rest from a lifetime of fighting. Joseph's wake was different. More people came, because he had been known in the neighborhood, had worked so long at the store. People liked him, but not even they knew. Not even they had any idea of the man he had been, of the father he had been, of the dawns he had woken up, of the sweat he had shed, of the dreams he had sacrificed. All for the daughter the world said wasn't worth it. I became a widow at 68 years old, alone for the first time in my life. No husband, no daughter, just me. And for a long time, I asked myself if it had been worth it, if that life of sacrifice, of pain, of prejudice had been worth it. And then, one sleepless night, I took an old box I kept in the closet. It had photos of Maria, photos over the years, her as a baby, her as a child, her as a teenager, her as an adult. In all the photos, the smile, that crooked, beautiful smile that lit everything up. And I remembered. I remembered all the mornings she woke up happy, all the times she smiled when we sang to her, all the Sundays in the park, all the songs, all the hugs, all the I love yous whispered. And then I knew. I knew it had been worth every second, every tear, every difficulty, because I had had the privilege of being a mother. Mother of Maria, the girl the world rejected, but who filled my life with meaning. Today I'm 83 years old. I live in a small apartment I got with Joseph's pension. I don't have much, but I have enough. And I have memories. Memories of a life that wasn't easy, but that was true, was full of love. There are people who ask me if I regret it, if I shouldn't have listened to the doctors back in 1960 and given Maria to an institution, if my life wouldn't have been easier. And I always answer the same thing. Easier, maybe. Emptier. Completely empty. Because Maria taught me things nobody else could teach. She taught me that perfection doesn't exist, that love has no conditions, that happiness is in the small things, in the good morning smile, in the tight hug, in the hand holding the hand. She taught me to be strong, to be a real mother. And Joseph? Ah, Joseph, that man I almost hated, that man who lied to me, who hurt me. That man taught me that love is shown in actions, not in words. He worked his whole life, woke up at dawn for decades, sacrificed himself in silence. And he did all of this for love. Love for his daughter, love for his family. He was wrong. He was very wrong. He shouldn't have lied. He shouldn't have kept me away from Maria in the first 8 years. But I understand why he did it. I understand the desperation. I understand the fear. And I forgave. I truly forgave, because in the end, what mattered weren't the mistakes. It was the love that overcame everything. If you're listening to me today and you're going through some difficulty, if you have a special child and you're suffering prejudice, if you're thinking about giving up, I tell you, don't give up. Your child loves you. Your child needs you. And the love you're going to share is going to be greater than any pain, greater than any judgment, greater than any difficulty. Society is still cruel. People still judge, still point, but you're stronger than that. Your love is stronger than that. And at the end of life, when you look back, you're not going to regret having loved. You're going to regret only the time you wasted with fear of others' judgment. I lived. I truly lived beside my daughter, beside my husband. And today, even alone, even old, I look back and smile because I was happy. I was happy in a way many people will never be, because I loved. I loved without conditions. I loved without limits. I loved until her last breath. Maria left 20 years ago, Joseph 15. But they continue alive in me. In every memory, in every photo, in every song I listen to, they're here. And one day, when my time comes, I'm going to meet them again, and we'll be together again, the three of us forever. This was my story. The story of a grandma who lost her daughter twice. Once when they tore her from my arms, and another when she left for heaven. But it's also the story of how true love overcomes everything. It overcomes pain, overcomes prejudice, overcomes even death. If this story touched your heart in some way, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel The Grandma's Diary to continue following real stories like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Have you ever gone through a similar situation? Have you ever had to fight against prejudice because of someone you love? I read all the comments, and who knows, your story might be the next one told here. A kiss on each of your hearts, and remember, love always wins. Always.